Life process chapter number 6. How can we find out the difference between what is alive and what is dead? If we see a cow, sheep, bird, or a dog running, or a man sitting in the street, we know that these are living organizations. What if the cow or the dog or the man were asleep? We would still consider that they were alive. But how did we know that? We observe them breathing, and we consider they are alive. But what can you say about plants? How do we find out that they are alive? We see them green. Few of us will see. But what we can say about plants that contains leaves of colors other than green? They grow over time. So we know that they are alive. Some will say, in other words, so we think of some kind of a moment, either growth related or not, as normal evidence for being alive. But a plant which is not growing visibly is still alive. And also some of the animals can breathe without visible movement. So taking visible movement as an important characteristics of life is not sufficient. So each invisible movement likely to be important as a defining characteristics of life. How can we define is invisible movement? Clearly, it is the movement not visible to the naked eye. Hence, movements which are at very small scales are invisible to the naked eye. Movements of molecules is an example. So let us ask the question somewhat differently. Is molecular movement essential for life? If we ask this question from professional biologist, they will say yes. In fact, viruses do not show any molecular movement in them until they infect some cell, and that is partly why there is a contradiction about them, whether they are exactly live or not. Why are moving molecules around essential for life? We have studied in earlier classes that living beings are well organized structures. They are made up of tissues. Tissues have cells. Cells contains smaller components in them, and so on. This ordered nature of living structures is very likely to keep breaking down due to the effects of the environment over time. If this order, so living creatures must keep maintaining and repairing their structures. Since all these living structures are made up of molecules, they must move molecules around all the time. What are life processes? The maintenance functions of a living being must go on even when they are not performing anything particular. We are just sitting in a ground. Even if we are just asleep at our bed, this maintenance job has to carry on. The process which together perform this maintenance job are life process. What exactly do life process require to do? Since this maintenance process will be required to prevent damage and breakdown, energy is likely to be required for them. Energy will eventually taken from outside the body of the individual organizations. So there must be a process to carry a source of energy from outside the body of the organizations, which we usually call food, to the inside, a process we usually call nutrition. If the body size of the organizations is to grow, additional raw material will also be required from outside, since life on earth depends upon the carbon based molecules. Most of these food sources are also carbon based. On the basis of the complexity of these carbon sources, various organizations can then use various kinds of nutritional process. These outside energy resources could be quite different, since the environment is not under the control of the individual organization. These energy resources therefore have to be broken down or built up in the body, and finally must be converted to a uniform source of energy that can be used for the different molecular movements required for maintaining living structures, as well as the kind to the kind of molecules the body requires to grow. For this, a series of chemical reactions in the sum of the most common chemical modes are to break down molecules. For this, a number of organizations can use oxygen sourced from outside the body. The process of getting oxygen from outside the body and to utilize it or other similar agents in the process of breaking of food sources for cellular requirements is what we usually called respiration. In the case of a unicellular organizations, so a specific organs is used for taking in food. Removal of waste or exchange of gases may be needed because the whole surface of the organizations is in contact with the environment. But what occurs when the body size of the organizations increases and the design of the body becomes more complex? In multicellular organizations, all the cells may not be in direct contact with the environment. Thus, a simple diffusion will not fulfill the requirements of all the cells. We have studied previously how in multicellular organizations several body parts are specialized in the functions they perform. We are familiar with these specialized tissues and with their organizations in the body of the organizations. Therefore, it is no surprise that intake of food and oxygen will also be a function of these specialized tissues. Hence, this creates a problem since the oxygen and food are now taken at one place in the body of the organizations. When all parts of the body require them, this situation creates a requirement of a transportation system for carrying oxygen and food from one place to another in the body. When chemical reactions utilize the carbon source and the oxygen, it is inevitable that they will produce byproducts that are not only useless for the cells of the body but could even be harmful for it. Therefore, these waste byproducts will need to be removed from the body and discarded outside. A process that we call excretion. Again, if the basic rules for body organizations in multicellular organizations are fluid, a specialized tissues for excretion will be developed, which means that the transportation system will require to carry waste away from cells to these excretory tissues. Let us consider these various processes so necessary to maintain life one by one. Nutrition. When we walk or ride a bicycle, we need energy even when we are not doing any apartment work. Energy is required to maintain a state of order in our body. We also require materials from outside to grow, to develop, to form protein and other substances required in the body. This source of energy is the food that we eat. How do living things get their food? The general need for energy and materials is normal in all organizations, but it is fulfilled by various ways. Some organizations use simple food material produced from inorganic sources in the form of carbon dioxide and water. These organizations or autotrophs include some bacteria and green planets and green plants. Other organizations consume complex substances. These complex substances need to be broken down into simpler ones before they can be used for the growth and development of the body. To do these organizations use biocatalysts known as enzymes. Thus, the life of heterotrophs depends directly or indirectly on autotrophs. Such heterotrophic organizations include fungi and animals. Autotrophic nutrition. Carbon energy requirements of the organizations are satisfied by photosynthesis. Simplify it is the process by which autotrophs obtain substances from the outside and change them into stored forms of energy. This substance is taken in the form of water and carbon dioxide, which is changed into carbohydrates in the presence of chlorophyll and sunlight. Carbohydrates sunlight, carbohydrates are used for giving energy to the plant. We will study how this occur in the next section. The carbohydrates which are not immediately used are stored in the form of starch which acts as the internal energy reserve to be utilized as and when needed by the plant. A somewhat same situation is observed in us, where some of the energy obtained from the food we eat is stored in our body in the form of glycogen. Let us now observe what really happens during the process of photosynthesis. The following events take place during this process: observations of light energy by chlorophyll, changing of light energy to chemical energy, and splitting of water nucleus into oxygen and hydrogen, reduction of carbon dioxide to carbohydrates. These steps need not occur one after the other immediately. For example, desert plants absorb carbon dioxide at night and form an intermediate which is acted upon by the energy taken up by the chlorophyll during the day. Let us observe how each of the components of the above reaction are essential for photosynthesis. If you observe a cross section of a leaf under the microscope carefully, you will observe that some cells have green dots. These green dots are cell organelles known as chloroplasts, which contain chlorophyll. Let us perform an activity which indicates that chlorophyll is necessary for photosynthesis. Let us now learn how the plant get carbon dioxide. In the previous class, we had talked about stomata, which are small pores present on the surface of the leaves. The plant exchanges gases with the air present in our surroundings. Through these pores, a large amount of water is also released through these stomata. Hence, plant closes these pores when it does not require carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. The closing and opening of the pore is a function of the God cells. The God cells as well when water flows into them, resulting in the opening of the stomatal pore. In the same way, the pores closes if the God cells shrink. On the basis of the two activities 1 and 2, can we design an experiment to find out that the sunlight is essential for photosynthesis. Water utilized in photosynthesis is taken up from the soil through the roots in terrestrial plant. So far we have discussed about how autotrophs meet their energy requirements, but they also require other raw materials for making their body. These materials like nitrogen, iron, phosphorus, magnesium, and other minerals are obtained from the soil. Nitrogen is an essential element utilized in the synthesis of proteins and other compounds. This is obtained either in the form of inorganic nitrates of nitrates, or it is taken up as organic compounds which have been synthesized by bacteria from atmospheric nitrogen. Heterotrophic nutrition. Every organization is adapted to its environment. The form of nutrition varies depending upon the kind and availability of food material as well as how it is taken up by the organisms. For example, whether the food source is mobile such as dairy or stationary such as grass would allow for differences in how the food is assessed and what is the nutritive material used by a lion and a cow. There is a range of stages by which the food is obtained and consumed by the organizations. Some organizations break down the food material outside the body and then absorb it. Examples are fungi like bread molds, mushrooms, and yeast. Others take in whole material and them inside their bodies. What can be taken in and broken down depends upon the body design and functioning. What do you think would be the differences in animals that eat grass, fruits, insects, fish, or dead rabbits as food? Some other organizations obtain nutrition from other animals or plants without killing them. This nutritive strategy is used by a variety of organizations like orchids, cuscuta, amarbel, ticks, lice, tape, worms, and leeches. How do organizations obtain their nutrition? Since the food and the way of obtaining food is different, the digestive system is also different in various organizations in unicellular organisms. The food may be taken in by the entire surface, but as the complexity of the organisms increases, various parts become specialized to perform various activities. For example, amoeba get food by using temporary finger-like extensions of the cell surface, which fuse over the food particle, making a food vacuole. Inside the food vacuole, complex substances are split up into the simpler ones, which get diffused into the cytoplasm. The remaining undigested material is transferred to the surface of the cell and thrown out in paramecium and unicellular organizations. The cell has a fixed shape and food is taken in at a specific spot. Food is transferred to each spot by the movement of cilia, which cover the whole surface of the cell. Nutrition in human beings. The alimentary canal is generally a long tube extending from the mouth to the anus. In given figure, we can observe that the tube has various parts. Different regions are specialized to do various functions. But what happens to the food once it is taken up by our body? We shall talk about this process here. We eat different types of food which has to move through the same digestive tract. Naturally, the food need to be processed to produce particles which are small and of the same texture. This is done by crushing the food with our teeth. Since the wall of the canal is soft, the food is also wetted for its smooth passage. When we eat something we like, our mouth starts watering. This is really not water but a fluid known as the saliva, which is secreted by the salivary glands. Salivary glands, another aspect of the food with intake, is its complex nature. If it is to be observed from the alimentary canal, it need to be broken into smaller ones. This is achieved only with the help of biological catalyst known as enzymes. The saliva have an enzyme known as salivary amylase that breaks down starch, which is a complex molecule, so to produce simple sugar. The food is mixed with saliva thoroughly and moved around the mouth during chewing by the muscular tongue. It is necessary to move the food in a regulated manner along the tube so that it can be processed appropriately. In each part, the wall of a canal has got muscles that contract rhythmically to push the food forward. These peristaltic movements take place all along the gut. From the mouth, the food is transported to the stomach through the food pipe or esophagus. The stomach is a big organ which expands when food enters in it. The muscular walls of the stomach help in mixing thoroughly the food with more digestive juices. The exact of a food from the stomach is controlled by a sphincter muscle which secretes it in a small amounts into the a small instant. The food we eat, many have germs, so the body requires mechanism to protect itself. Further digestion also occurs in the stomach. These functions are carried by the gastric glands present in the wall of the stomach. Which secrete mucus a protein digesting enzyme called pepsin and hydrochloric acid. The hydrochloric acid makes an acidic medium which is essential for the activations of the pepsin. What other function do you consider is served by the acid? The mucus protects the inner lining of the stomach from the effect of the acid. Under normal conditions, we have often heard of adults complaining about acidity. Can this be correlated to what has been studied above? Now the food from the stomach enters the small intestine. This is the largest part of the alimentary canal, which is located into a compact space because of extensive cooling. The length of the small intestines varies in different animals depending upon the food they eat. Herbivores eating grass require a longer small intestine to digest the cellulose. And the cellulose meat is easier to digest. Hence, carnivores like tigers contain a shorter small intestine, the site of the complete digestion of carbohydrates. Fats and proteins is the small intestine. It receives the secretions of the pancreas and liver. For this purpose, the food coming from the stomach is acidic and need to be made alkaline for the action of pancreatic enzymes. In addition, bile juice secreted from the liver accomplishes this to act on fats. Fats are present in the intestine in the form of large globules, which makes the action of enzymes difficult on them, increasing the efficiency of enzymes. This is similar to the emulsifying action of soaps on dirt that we have studied about in chapter 4. Pancreas releases a pancreatic juice which have enzymes like trypsin for digesting proteins and lipids for breaking down in emulsified fats. The lining of the small intestine have glands which is secret intestinal juice. Finally, the enzymes present in it convert the proteins to amino acids, fats into fatty acids, and the complex carbohydrates into glucose and glycerol. The digestive food is absorbed by the walls of the intestine. The wall of the small intestine has numerous finger-like projections known as villi, which increase the surface area for the absorption. The villi are richly supplied with blood vessels which carry the absorbed food to each and every cell of the body. Here it is used for obtaining energy, building up new tissues, and the repairing of old ones. The undigested food is passed into the large intestine where villi absorb more water from this undigested food. The remaining material is removed from the body via the anus. The excretion of this waste material is controlled by the anal sphincter. We have talked about the nutrition in organisms in the previous section. The food material taken in during the process of nutrition is utilized in cells to get energy for different life processes. Diverse organisms do this in separate ways. Some use oxygen for the breaking of glucose completely into water and carbon dioxide. Some use other methods that do not involve oxygen. In all cases, the first step is the breaking of glucose, a 6-carbon molecule, into a 3-carbon molecule named pyruvate. This process occurs place in the cytoplasm. Further, the pyruvate may be changed into carbon dioxide and ethanol. This process occurs in yeast during fermentation. Since this process occurs in the absence of air, oxygen, it is known as anaerobic oxygen occurs in the mitochondria. This process breaks up the 3-carbon purate molecule to produce three molecules of carbon dioxide and water. Since this process occurs in the presence of air, oxygen, it is known as aerobaric respiration. The evaluation of energy in this aerobaric process is greater than the anaerobic process sometimes when there is a lack of oxygen. A lack of oxygen in our muscle cells. Another method for the breaking of a pyruvate is used. Here the pyruvate is changed into lactic acid, which also have three carbon molecules. So produced lactic acid in our muscles during sudden activity causes cramps. The energy released during cellular respiration is immediately converted in a molecule called ATP, which is used as energy fuel for all other activities in the cell. In this process, ATP is broken down to produce an amount of energy which help the enteric reactions to take place in the cell. Since the aerobonic pathways of respiration produces more energy, aerobic organizations have to ensure that there is a sufficient intake of oxygen. We have observed that plants exchange gases by stomata and the large intercellular spaces, so that all cells are in contact with air. Oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged by diffusion here. They can go into cells or away from the cell out into the air. The direction of diffusion is based on the environmental conditions and the needs of the plant. At night, when there is no photosynthesis is taking place, CO2 release in the major exchange activity going on during the day. CO2 produced during respiration is used up for photosynthesis. Hence, there is no CO2 release. Instead, the release of oxygen is the major event at this time. Animals have developed different organs for the intake of oxygen from the environment and for the release of carbon dioxide. Leverated animals that live in water requires the oxygen dissolved in water. Terrestrial animals can obtain the oxygen from the atmosphere for breathing. Since the amount of oxygen dissolved in water is fairly low in comparison to the amount of oxygen in the air, the rate of breathing in aquatic organizations is much faster than the terrestrial organizations. Fishes takes water in through their mouths and force it to pass through the gills where the dissolved oxygen is observed by the blood. Terrestrial organizations utilize the oxygen in the atmosphere for respiration. This oxygen is absorbed by various organs. In various animals, all these organs have a structure that increases the surface area which is in contact with the atmosphere which is rich in oxygen. Since the exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen has to take place through this surface. This surface is very fine and delicate. In order to protect this process, it is generally placed within the body. So there have to be passes that will pass air to this region. In addition, there is a mechanism for passing the air in and out of this area where the oxygen is absorbed. In human beings, the air is taken through the nostrils. The air passing through the nostrils get filtered by the fine hairs that line the passage, so that clear and pure air go inside the body. The passage is also limited with mucus, which helps in this process. From here, the air passes through the throat into the lungs. Rings of cartilage present in the throat ensure that the air passage does not collapse. In lungs, the passage divides into a smaller tubes, which finally end forming balloon-like structures called singular alveoli. So the alveoli provide a surface where the exchange of gases can occur. The walls of the alveoli have an extensive network of blood vessels. As we have studied, when we breathe in, we lift our ribs and flatten our diaphragm. And as a result, the chest cavity becomes larger in size. Due to this, air is absorbed into the lungs and fills the expanded alveoli. The blood carry carbon dioxide from the various parts of the body to release into the alveoli, and the oxygen present to the alveolar air is absorbed up by body in the alveolar blood vessels to be transported to all the cells in the entire body during the breathing cycle. When air is breathed in and out, the lungs always have a reduced residual volume of air. Hence, there is a sufficient time for oxygen to get absorbed and for the carbon dioxide to be released. If the body if the body size of the animals is big, allowing the diffusion pressure alone to take care of providing oxygen to various body parts becomes less efficient. Instead, respiratory pigments absorb the oxygen from the air in the lungs and carry it to different tissues which are deficient in oxygen. The respiratory pigment in human beings is hemoglobin, which has a very high affinity for oxygen. This pigment is found in the red blood corpuscles. Carbon dioxide is highly soluble in water, so it is mostly transported and dissolved from in our blood. We have studied in previous sections that blood transports oxygen, food and waste materials in our bodies. In class 9, we have studied that food it is a fluid connective tissue. Blood consists of a fluid medium called plasma, in which the cells are suspended. Plasma transports food, nitrogens, waste, and carbon dioxide in dissolved form. Oxygen is transported by the red blood cells. Many other substances like salts are also carried by the blood. Hence, we need a pumping organ to push blood around the whole body. A network of tubes to reach all the tissues, and a system in place to ensure that this network can be repaired in if harmed. Our pump, the heart is a muscular organ which is an large as our first, because both carbon dioxide and oxygen have to be transported by the body. The heart has separated chambers to prevent the mixing of oxygen rich blood with the blood having carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide rich blood has to reach the lungs for the removal of carbon dioxide, and the oxygenated blood from the lungs has to be carried back to the heart. This oxygen rich blood is then pumped to the whole body. We can follow this process step by step. Oxygen upper chamber of the heart on the left, called the left arterium. The left arterium relaxes when it is collecting this blood. Then it contracts, while the next chamber the left ventricle relaxes, so that the blood is transferred to it. When the muscular left ventricle contracts in its turn, the blood is pumped out to the various parts of the body. Deoxygenated blood comes back from the various parts of the body to the upper chamber on the right. The right atrium, as the right atrium contracts the right ventricle, the corresponding lower chamber dilates. This pushes blood to the right ventricle, which in turn pumps it to the lungs for oxygenation. Since ventricles have to pump blood into different organs of the body, they contain thicker muscular walls than the arteria. Valves checks that blood does not flow backwards when the ventricles or arteria contract. Oxygen enters the body in the lungs. The separation of the left side and the right side of the heart is beneficial to avoid mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Such separation allows a highly efficient supply of oxygen to the whole body. This is useful in animals and deoxygenated blood. Such separation allows a highly efficient supply of oxygen to the whole body. This is useful in animals that have high energy requirements, such as mammals and birds, which constantly use energy to maintain their body temperature. In those animals which do not utilize energy for this purpose, the body temperature depends on the temperature of the environment. Such animals like amphibians or many reptiles have chambered hearts and tolerate some mixing of the deoxygenated and oxygenated blood streams. On the other hand, fishes have only two, each oxygenated and then passes directly to the various parts of the body. Thus, blood passes only one through the heart in fishes during one cycle of passage through the whole body. On the other hand, in other vertebrates, it passes through the heart twice during one cycle. This is known as double circulation. The tubes, blood vessels. Arteries are the vessels which transport blood away from the heart to different organs of the body. Since the blood comes out from the heart under high pressure, the arteries have elastic thick valves when collect the blood from various organs and carry it back to the heart. They don't require thick valves because the blood is no longer under pressure. Instead, they contain valves that ensure the flow of blood only in one direction. On reaching a tissue or organ, the artery divides into smaller vessels to carry the blood to all the individual cells. The smallest vessels contain walls which are one cell thick and are known as capillaries. Exchange of material between the blood and surrounding cells occurs across this thin wall. The capillaries then join together to make veins that transport the blood away from the tissue or organ. Maintenance by platelets. What will occur if this system of tubes develops a leak? Consider about the situations when we are injured and start bleeding. Naturally, the loss of blood from the system has to be reduced. In addition, leakage would cause a loss of pressure, which would minimize the efficiency of the pumping system. The blood has platelet cells to avoid which circulate around the body and plug these leaks by helping to collect the blood at place of injury. Life form. There is another kind of fluid which also helps in transpiration. This is known as life form or tissue fluid. Through the pores present in the walls of capillaries, some amount of proteins, plasma, and blood cells escape into intercellular spaces in the tissues to make the tissue fluid or lacquer. It is the same to the plasma of blood but colorless and has very less protein. Life drains into lymphatic capillaries from the intercellular spaces, which join to make large lymph vessels that gradually open into larger veins. Lymph transports digested and absorbed fat from intestine and drains excess fluid from extracellular space back into the blood. Transpiration in plants. We have studied earlier how plants intake simple compounds such as CO2 and photosynthetic energy stored in their organs containing chlorophyll. Namely leaves the outer kinds of raw materials required for building plant bodies will also have to be taken up separately. For plants, the soil is the richest and nearest source of raw materials like phosphorus, nitrogen, and other minerals. The absorption of these substances therefore take place through the part in contact with the soil called roots. If the distances between chlorophyll containing organs and soil contacting organs are small, energy and raw materials can diffuse easily to all the parts of the plant body. But if these distance become large because of changes in plant body design, diffusion process will not be sufficient to give raw material in leaves and energy in roots. A proper system of transpiration is therefore necessary in these situations. Energy needs vary between various body designs. Plants do not move, and plant bodies have a large no of dead cells in many tissues. As a result, plants have low energy requirement and can use relatively slow transport systems. The distance at which transport systems have to operate hence can be very large in plants like very tall trees. Plant transport systems will carry energy storage from leaves and raw material from roots. These two pathways are formed or organized, conducting tubes independently. One the exam transfer water and minerals obtained from the soil. The other phloem transports products of photosynthesis from the leaves we where they are prepared to other parts of the plant. We have learned about the structure of these tissues in detail in our previous class. Transport of water in exime tissue. Heads and vessels of roots, leaves, and stems are interconnected to make a continuous system of water conducting channels reaching different parts of the whole plant. At the roots cells and different parts of the whole plant. At the roots cells in contact with the soil actively intake ions. This creates a difference in the concentration of these ions between the soil and the root. Therefore, water transported into the root from the soil to overcome this difference. This shows that there is a steady movement of water into root xylem, forming a column of water that is continuously pushed upwards. However, this pressure by itself is unlike to be sufficient to move water over the heights that we normally see in plants. Plants use another strategy to carry water in the exam upwards to be highest points of the plant body. Provided the plant has an adequate supply of water, the water lost through the stomata get replaced by water from the exime vessels in the leaf. In fact, evaporation of water molecules from the cells of a leaf creates a suction pressure which pulls water from the exime cells of roots. The loss of water from the aerial parts of the plant in the form of vapor is called as transpiration. Hence, transpiration helps in the absorption and upwards movement of minerals and water dissolved in it from roots to the leaves. It also helps in the regulation of temperature. The effect of root pressure in the transport of water is so important at night. During the day when the stomata are open, the transpiration pool becomes the major pulling force in the transpiration of water in the exam. Transport of food and other substances. We have studied the transport of minerals and water in plants. Now let us think how the products of metabolic process, particularly photosynthesis, are transported from leaves. Where they are synthesized to other parts of the plant, these substances are especially transported to the storage organs of fruits, roots, and seeds, and to growing organs. This transport of soluble products of photosynthesis is known as translocation, and it takes place in the part of the vascular tissues code as phloem. Besides the products of photosynthesis, the phloem carry amino acids and other substances. The translocation of food and other substances occurs in the sieve tubes with the help of adjacent companion cells both in the downward and upward directions. Unlike transport in enzyme, which can be explained by simple physical forces, the translocation in phloem is achieved by utilizing energy, obtaining energy from ATP. This increasing this increase the atomic pressure of the tissue, which results in the movement of water into it. This pressure transfer the material in the phloem to tissues to move material according to the need of a plant. For example, in the spring, sugar stored in stem or root tissue would be carried to the buds, which require energy to grow. Excretion we have already studied how organizations release gases waste produced during photosynthesis or respiration. Other metallic activities produce nitrogenous materials which have to be removed. The biological process involved the release of these harmful metallic wastes from the body is called excretion. Various organizations use different strategies to these. Many unicellular organizations excrete these waste by simple diffusion from the body surface into the surrounding water. As we have observed in other processes, complex multicellular organizations use specialized organs to perform the same function. Excretion in human beings. The excretory system of human beings involves a pair of ureters, a pair of kidneys, a urinary bladder, and a urethra. Kidneys are present in the abdomen, one on either side of the backbone. Urine produced in the kidneys transfers through the ureters into the urinary bladder where it is stored until it is excreted through the urethra. How is urine produced? The purpose of forming urine is to filter out waste products from the blood, just as CO2 is released from the blood in the lungs. Nitrogen waste such as uric acid or urea are released from blood in the kidneys. It is then not a surprise to know that the basic filtration unit in the kidneys, as in the lungs, is a cluster of very thin wall blood capillaries. Each cluster of capillary in the kidney is associated to the cap-shaped end of a coiled tube called Bohm's capsule that collects the filtered urine. Each kidney has large numbers of these filtration units known as nephros closely packed together. Some substances in the intestinal filtered, such as glucose, salts, amino acids, and a major amount of water, are reabsorbed selectively as the urine moved along the tube. The amount of water reabsorbed depends on how much excess water present there is in the body and how much dissolved water is to be excreted. The urine produced in each kidney enters a long tube, the urethra, which connects the urinary bladder with the kidney. Urine is stored in the urinary bladder until the pressure of the expanded bladder results the urge to pass it out through the urethra. The bladder is muscular, so it is under nervous control, as we have studied elsewhere. As a result, we can generally control the urge to urinate. Excretion in plants. Plants are completely various category for excretion from animals. Oxygen itself can be considered as a waste product produced during photosynthesis. We have studied earlier how plants deal with oxygen as well as CO2. They remove the excess water by transpiration. For other wastes, plants use the fact that many of their tissues are made up of dead cells and that they can even lose some parts like leaves. Many waste products of plants are stored in cellular vacuoles. Waste products may be stored in leaves that fall off Other waste products are stored as gums and resins, mainly in old exile. Plants also release some waste products into the soil around them.